Hello and welcome. Today we're digging into what many are calling the biggest change in the history of the SNAP program. You know, the program that helps millions of Americans put food on the table. A brand new law is about to change, well, pretty much everything. And we're going to break down exactly what that means for you. All right, let's just jump right in because to really get a sense of the stakes here, you have to look at the numbers. The heart of this new law is a major cut to monthly benefits. We're talking anywhere from $72 to as much as $231 per household. This isn't just a small tweak, it's a massive change for family budgets all across the country. So, to wrap our heads around all of this, we're going to break it down into four main parts. We'll start with the historic change itself, then get into the nitty-gritty of the new rules. After that, we'll look at the real-world impacts being reported, and finally, we'll talk about how you can prepare. First up, let's talk about the historic change itself. Where did all this come from? Let's look at the actual legislation that got this ball rolling. So what we're talking about today, it all comes from this one big piece of legislation. It's called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and it was signed into law back in July 2025, under President Trump. Now, this isn't all happening at once. It's a phased rollout. The tougher work requirements, those went into effect immediately back in July 2025. But there's a second really controversial piece, new rules on what you can actually buy. And that's being rolled out starting in 2026. Okay, so that's the timeline. Now let's dig into the nitty-gritty of these new rules. Who exactly is affected, and what can you even buy anymore? The absolute core of this new law is a mandatory work requirement. Now, to be eligible for benefits, if you're an adult between 18 and 64, you have to prove you're working at least 80 hours a month. That's basically a part-time job, about 20 hours a week. And this is where you can really see the impact. This new law gets rid of exemptions that have been in place for a long time for some really vulnerable groups. We're talking veterans, former foster youth, and people experiencing homelessness. They all now fall under that same 80-hour-a-month work rule, no exceptions. All right, so that's the work stuff. But there's another huge change, and it's all about what people can actually buy with their benefits. And this really gets to the heart of the debate here. Is this all about encouraging healthier choices, or is it just another roadblock for families who are already struggling? So here's the deal. Starting in 2026, in 12 states like Texas and Florida, you won't be able to use SNAP funds for sugary snacks. The stated goal, the official line, is to push for healthier eating. But on the flip side, critics, and our sources really highlight this, they argue this just makes grocery shopping even harder for families who are already having a tough time. Okay, so we've got the new rules down. Now let's turn to what's actually happening out there. Let's talk about the real-world impacts. How are these changes actually playing out in our communities? One of the first things we're seeing, and it's summed up perfectly by this quote from our source material, is that food banks are already overwhelmed. I mean, think about that. The system that's supposed to be the backup, the safety net for the safety net, well, it's already under a ton of pressure. So, who's getting hit the hardest by all this? Well, the sources are pointing to seniors and households with kids. And you have to remember, this is all happening at a time when inflation is making everything more expensive. For these families, every single dollar in their food budget is absolutely critical. And this puts families in a really tough spot. I mean, with less money for food, what do? A lot of people might have to start buying cheaper, less nutritious options just to make sure there's enough food on the table. It's this awful trade-off, right? Quality versus quantity. So, with all these challenges, what can people actually do? Let's move into our last section, how to prepare. This is all about practical, actionable steps you can take based on what our sources are suggesting. The recommendation is basically a 4-step plan. First, know where you stand. Check your own eligibility and your new work status. Second, look for help in your community. Get in touch with your local food bank. Third, make your voice heard. Call up your representatives. And finally, and this is a big one, spread the word. Share this information so that everyone knows what's going on. So when you step back and look at it all, we've seen how one single law can ripple out and change the work requirements for a veteran, what a family puts in their grocery cart, and how much strain is on a local food bank. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How do these huge, sweeping policy changes from way up high end up affecting the very small, very personal details of our everyday lives?